Hello everyone. Greetings and a sunny afternoon at Complutense University in Madrid, Spain. It's the beginning of spring. You might hear the birds chirping in the background. If you don't, I certainly do. My name is Jorge Arús Hita and I'm recording this video as a contribution to the centenary of Michael Halliday's birth to tell you a few things about his influence on my research. I first met Halliday on occasion of a lecture he gave at my university, Complutense de Madrid, while I was an undergrad student and had no idea that I would one day devote my professional life to academy. Of course, I didn't actually meet him, just saw him and listened to his talk on lexicography. The first edition of IFG, of Introduction to Functional Grammar, had appeared a few years earlier, 1985. So this must have been at the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s. Gosh, I'm getting old. And I guess by that time he had just retired from Sydney Uni and was starting to be fully devoted to his work on SFL theory. Around a decade later, and after many trips back and forth the US and Spain, where I finally settled professionally at Complutense, I met him during ISFC 25, the Silver Jubilee held in Cardiff, the same as the Golden Jubilee will be held this coming summer too. I think it was my then thesis supervisor, Julia Lavid, who introduced me to him. And as all those who got to know him will imagine, he was extremely kind and welcoming. By that time, I had already been highly exposed to SFL theory since I had been working on my PhD thesis for around 6 years, I would say. My thesis on the lexicogrammar of Spanish in comparison with English largely drew on Christian Matheson's lexicogrammatical cartography and therefore on Halliday's Introduction to Functional Grammar and his earlier writings on the subject. That conference was a sort of milestone experience for me, almost an abathis, you could call it, as I got to know not just Michael Halliday, but also Christian Matheson, Robin Fawcett, and all the big names whose writings had accompanied and inspired me for several years then. Meeting all those wonderful people, including, of course, Michael Halliday himself, was a source of encouragement and inspiration that has lasted to date. After that encounter, I was lucky enough to meet him on several occasions at different systemic conferences, often accompanied by his beloved Rukaya Hassan, sometimes even having the privilege of sharing the table at a meal or over drinks. I keep very fond memories of a very nice dinner in Madrid during the European Systemic Functional Conference hosted by Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, as well as the celebrations on his 80th birthday at ISFC Sydney Uni. I keep some other fond memories, but those are the ones that most literally spring to mind. If I had to describe Michael Halliday's influence on my research, I would say it has been monumental, whether directly from him or through those who have been inspired by him or who have interpreted him, or better said, his ideas. I could very well say that without IFG, without Introduction to Functional Grammar, my research career would not exist, or at least would have been a much more uh, miserable experience. His work is so present in my professional life that the name Halliday is probably the single word I've most often pronounced in my life, other than my daughter's names. More precisely, I could say that Halliday's work on lexicogrammar are those that have influenced, Halliday's work, I should say, on lexicogrammar is that which has influenced my research the most, notably regarding transitivity and theme. My PhD thesis, as I said before, was on lexicogrammar with a focus on transitivity, And for instance, the book Systemic Functional Description of Spanish, A Contrast with English, co-authored with my colleagues and friends Julia David and Juan Rafael Zamorano, also draws heavily on IFG. In the last years, I have busied myself with thematicity and texture issues, and once again, IFG has been, if not my bedside book, certainly my desk side book. In the last years, for a number of professional and personal reasons, I've been in close contact with Christian Matheson, one of Halliday's most celebrated disciples. This has given me the opportunity, among other things, of hearing many anecdotes about Halliday's wonderful life, as well as discussing different aspects of his work with the person who probably knows the most about Halliday. Therefore, I have to thank Christian, also among other things, for keeping Halliday's memory and ideas well alive. In fact, Halliday is very present in my day to day. If I turn this round, you'll probably see his portrait. I hope you're seeing it. Well, his picture, the photograph of his, of him, I should say. Okay. And so this picture is constantly presiding over my workstation. So you may call it placebo, but I feel his presence inspiring me. And this, if a bit brief, is all I would like to share right now with you about the influence of our dear and ever remembered Michael Halliday. May his worldwide influence last at least 100 more years. Goodbye from Complutense University in Madrid, as I said, on a sunny spring afternoon. Goodbye.